Okay, so this is a very quick recording to show how to set up Substance Painter to work best with Empire at War. So when you first open Substance Painter and you have the new project dialog, you want to select your model. I've loaded it in OBJ already. You want to change it to 4096. I always start in 4K because you can downscale later. And then you want to pick the non-PBR specular glossiness template, and you can auto unwrap if you need to. This is already unwrapped, so I'm just going to leave that alone. And then you want to make sure the normal map format is set to DirectX and not OpenGL. Um, Otherwise, that's all you need to do. So click OK. We'll bring the model in. And then you make your texture. So first thing is to start by baking all of the maps at 4K. Don't need to bake an ID. I mean, you can, but I don't have an ID set up for this model, so I'll uncheck that. I like to turn on anti-aliasing. Takes a little longer. You don't have to. Just looks a little bit nicer. Bake selected textures. Okay. And then over to the right, where we have our layers and then texture set settings, we want to tab over to this. This is going to show us all of the different channels that are inside of our material. We want to keep diffuse, we want to keep specular, um, glossiness and specular. We can delete glossiness. We want height, normal, and emissive. Um, if you want an opacity, you can add that. That would be for like the mesh alpha shader, things that need that kind of transparency. If that's applicable to your model, you can add it here. You can add an ambient occlusion channel if you want to control the ambient occlusion manually, as opposed to just using uh, whatever the whatever got baked into the model. Um, but that's good enough for us for now. These are the ones that we really need. Even though we are exporting normal maps, you want to keep the height channel. When you export the DirectX compatible normal map, it's going to combine the height and normal data into a normal map for you. So keep them both. Um, and that is what we need there. So now we'll just paint a really stupid texture on here. Let's start by making some nice metal edgeware. We'll throw on a tool dirt layer. Because in Star Wars, everything accumulates dirt, even if it's in space. Okay, that looks amazing. And we'll throw on an emissive layer. Just put some lights on here for fun. sure and turn on our emissive channel and set it to kind of a lightish blue. Just throw some windows on here for fun. Okay, once your texture is made, then you want to export those channels, all of those maps. When you come in here to your global settings, you select the different texture sets that you want to export, and it's going to default to this non-PBR specular glossiness, which is what we selected. You can choose a different file type if you want. I use PNGs because I'm going to take them into Photoshop later and I can resave them whatever I want. Dilation is when it takes the last pixel within a UV shell and it just duplicates that pixel into infinity, so that if for some reason the seam of that UV shell, is 1 pixel larger or smaller in the final output, there's something there besides just black. But you can turn that off if you want. None, or dilation plus transparent plus diffusion, default background color. You can pick which option you want. Um, if you pick another option, you can choose how many pixels the dilation goes out rather than being infinite. I usually just leave it alone. Doesn't really matter. Um, we need to, though, even though this is the template we wanted for setting up our proper materials, we want to go ahead and change this to document channels plus normal plus AO no alpha. This is going to allow us to export our baked ambient occlusion so that we can put it over the top of our diffuse map in Photoshop with a multiply layer blending style so that we can bake that into our final DDS texture. We don't need to export height. We don't need to export the normals here because we're going to export these DirectX normals down here. So what we need is diffuse, specular, emissive, DirectX normals, and then our ambient occlusion. And we'll do that for each. And export. We'll bring all of these into Photoshop. Okay, so this is our ambient occlusion. We'll just copy and paste this right into our diffuse and then add a multiply layer blending style that bakes it into the diffuse map nicely. Our emissive, this becomes our uh, lights texture that we would apply with mesh additive using a separated mesh, the way that Empire at War does that. And then our normals that are just a normal map, nothing special there. It's just a regular normal map. You'd prepare it the same way you would any other normal map by taking your specular channel and pasting that into the alpha of your normal. Make sure to take your blue channel and make it all white, and then you just resize it to whatever you want and save it. And then likewise with your diffuse, once you've combined the ambient occlusion over the top of it, you just add team colors to the alpha channel if you want for the mesh bump colorized shader, and resize it and save it as a DDS. And that's pretty much it. It's super straightforward. If you want to, you can set up a custom template. I've done one for Empire at War here. Um, so you just pick, for example, diffuse as an RBG, So you just pick RGB to add a new one, and then you drag base color over into that RGB slot, RGB channels, ding. So I've set this up to export diffuse twice now. You can rename it whatever you want. Like normals would also be an RGB, and then you just bring over your DirectX normals. There you go. You can set up as many of those as you want for whatever template, and then you can pick this when you make a new file instead of the non-PBR. But if you don't want to take the time to set that up, the non-PBR spec gloss works well enough. You just don't need the extra glossiness channel that it puts in there. The specular channel by itself is plenty for Empire at War. So that's that. Super easy.